My name is Tamla Milton, and I am your host for The Melting Pot, Pastors on Topic. And our mission is to bring together faith-based voices to give their perspective on current events, hot topics, and things that are happening all over the world. So welcome to The Melting Pot. And today we have three very fine guests, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, Tamla. I'm David Kopp, Senior Elder, Life Center out in Orange.
Hey.
And my name is Gregory Sanders. I lead the Rock Christian Fellowship here in Long Beach, and I'm fortunate enough to be the president of the Long Beach Ministries Alliance.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm Tyrone, LaRose, pastor from the Heart Church Ministries of Los Angeles.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today on The Pot. And today we have a very interesting topic that I think that you all will be able to bring a wonderful perspective to. And I don't know if you all are aware of that recently, First Lady Loretta Jones, Noel Jones' wife, she was assaulted during a Sunday morning service. And so I thought it would be important that we come together and discuss assaults on pastors or their families, and it would be great to get your perspective on this. So thank you again for joining us today.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you, have any of you ever experienced assault or even like a near assault on yourself or on your families at your church? And Pastor Cobb, Senior Elder Cobb, we'll start with you.
Yeah, several times actually. I was, our church, before we moved to Orange, we were about 68 years down in Long Beach off of 7th and Dawson. And I was a youth pastor and then a senior pastor and kind of did everything there. But one time someone had come, was asking for some help, and we'd given them some limited help, but not what they wanted. And I think he was not very happy about that. So Sunday morning, I'm leading worship in the front, and I see him come in the back door, and I see him, he saw me. I think he was probably, I'm sure he was high, and but he saw me all the way back, and everyone is singing and lifting their hands, and the ushers are all singing, and I see him coming down the side row, the front row, and he's screaming, and I can see him saying, "I'm gonna kill you."
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, I'm in the middle of leading worship. Then he got to the front and started to come up to me. And he actually yelled, "I'm going to kill you." And then two of the guys finally jumped on him and tackled him. And it was quite traumatic. And so, you know, that created a set of protocols. He shouldn't have not got down that far. But yeah, that was one of the times that was pretty memorable.
Yes, I'm sure that was quite frightening to see him approaching you. Yes. What about you, Pastor Sanders?
I've never experienced that in the church.
Okay.
So I'm fortunate in that space. We've had, times where people were not happy, but no one's ever confronted me or my family or even threatened us in the sanctuary.
Okay.
So I'm fortunate in that space.
So no incidents or anything, no close calls
Not
or
today,
anything?
not to date. Not
Okay.
to date. I'm fortunate in that incident.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
fortunate.
really, yes.
Okay. And what about you, Pastor LaRose?
Well, I haven't experienced it to that extent. There was a close call that we had early on in ministry where we had a young man who was sitting up front, and at the altar call, he came up to give his life to Christ, but he had a different intent. And so I had to step back from being right directly in front of him, just in case he decided to lunge. And so from that point on, we kind of did things a little differently.
Okay. And that's interesting that you were saying that it happened right at altar call, because with First Lady Loretta, she was actually sitting on the front row facing the pulpit, so she never saw it coming. And so they were actually doing their altar call, and it was a parishioner who assaulted her. And so she was totally caught off guard, and I'm sure everyone else in the building was caught off guard as well. But what do you think that churches can do to prevent these types of things from happening?
Well, I mean, I think there's two layers that we have to think about. There's the natural causes and the natural protections, whether it be, training our doorkeepers or our whatever they might be called, and the people that are there guarding the entrances. But I think there's a deeper issue also, just spiritually, really covering the senior pastors and their families in real strong prayer, because this isn't just a natural phenomenon. There's a target on I think leaders and in these days we live in, and it's a spiritual attack as well. I mean, Jesus said, "You strike the shepherd, then the sheep will scatter," and so we have really strong prayer battle lines that are going on regularly for the senior pastors and elders, and also then doing the natural things of just making sure that we're checking people and the doorkeepers don't get lost in worship, but they're there, they're on call, on duty, and so I think it's two-pronged.
Yes, of course. And Pastor Sanders, what do you think?
It's interesting because in June 2023, CNN did a report and said one of the most dangerous hours in America is now 11 o'clock on Sunday morning.
Oh.
And that was just June 2023. And they talked about how the church has become the front line for mental illness, for unhoused, for addicted. Listen, Isaiah 61, all that are hurting and broken come to me. So we do have to be a little more vigilant. Still have to be loving, caring, transformative, but it has required us to be a little more vigilant in how we navigate. Like, everyone can't get lost in worship.
Right.
Everyone can't get lost in prayer. We do have to have men on the wall or women on the wall who are watching, watching our community, because we have to protect our sheep.
Yes, definitely.
And it is, and that was interesting when CNN came up with that, the most dangerous time in America is 11 o'clock.
On a
in church.
Sunday.
On Sunday.
Isn't that
Yes.
something?
I didn't know
It
that.
seems like
but
that should be the calmest time, since
you would-
everybody's
right.
worshiping
You would
mostly
think,
during
right.
that time. You would
Yeah,
think.
but because it is such a high point spiritually, I mean, we're faith-based, and so I believe that there are, if you believe in God, you have to believe in the other side as well, and they want to. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, and so we have to expect it, especially in these last days that we're living in. It's going to become worse and worse, but yet we have to arise and shine.
That's right. Yes. And what about you?
I agree with the prayer. Prayer is important. I think what we did as a church is not only we keep leadership in prayer, but we have people stagnant throughout the
Right.
church. There's certain people unidentified, and we have someone who monitors who's coming in and who's coming out, not in the door, outside the door.
Right.
And so that's the first cover that we have. And then we have certain people strategically throughout the sanctuary to keep their eyes on anybody with bags, anybody who has an intent that they sense that something's not right.
Right. I know I grew up in the church, and that was something you never thought about, having to have security inside of the church. And so nowadays we really have to do that. Like you said, we're getting closer and closer, and things are getting darker and darker in this world. And so to block the message from going forth, like you said, you strike the shepherd, then the sheep will scatter. And so we are in that day now. Do you think that mental health plays a part in the assaults that are happening now?
Well, I think obviously, mental health is an issue. I was thinking about our topic, and when we talk about mental health, there's the clinical side, there's the logical side, there's brain that's not functioning properly or chemical imbalances, but there's also a deeply spiritual side to it. And we have to learn and become skilled in navigating both of those. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking of this verse that Jesus said. He said, "People will faint from terror. They are apprehensive of what's coming on the world." And so, in the last days, people are going to be terrified. They're going to be apprehensive. They're going to fear what's even to come. And yet the Lord says that when we see that happening, we're supposed to stand up and lift up our heads. And so I think the mental health issue, we have to learn to be skilled in both. It kind of like in the old days, it was either Either that's a demon, or we send you off to a professional counselor. And I think that we have to be skilled to create a mix of those things where there is spiritual deliverance and discernment, but also there's the follow-up to that, or there's the complement to that of go and get some help and let's help you find that.
Yes, that's very important.
Pastor Noel Jones, his wife that we're referencing, has a great saying. He says, there has to be a psychology that complements our theology. And we are always caring for the broken. Now, although I've never been attacked, we've had to navigate some Sundays where obviously we're inclusive, we're inviting, we're loving, but where we allowed people in the congregation, but they were not in their right mind.
Okay.
And that required us to escort them out. We try to do this gently as we can. Nobody wants to come to a church where you got to go through metal detectors.
No.
You know, or get wanded. That's not the church. But we do have to be vigilant.
Yes.
And we have to be very, very, like you said, we have to have people positioned to be our blind spots, if you will, our mirrors on our vehicles, that we won't see everything.
Yeah.
And so it is important for us to have blind spots.
Yeah, I agree with both. The thing about mental health, sometimes it's used in the wrong way. Everything is not a mental health issue.
Right.
Some of it is just anger.
Yeah.
And people nowadays are walking around with a whole lot of held in anger based on their life, what happened in them in their life. And I don't think everything is a mental health issue, though we need to address mental health issues. But we also need to address temperament and anger.
Right.
And we need to know the difference between what's a person's anger than a person's mental stability. And I think once we get to that point and diagnose it correctly, then we can cure the anger.
Yeah.
Now, would you say that takes some time to do?
Yeah.
You have someone walking in for the first time. You have no idea who they are or where they're coming from. And you know, nowadays we have the unhoused is so high now, and they're just walking into churches either for financial help, for something to eat, you know, and so you don't have that immediate chance to assess whether it's going to be, is this a mental issue, is this an anger issue? So things catch us off guard, you know. And you think about the mega churches where they do have the security in place. But what about the smaller churches where they don't have the resources to have a security team? What advice would you give them as far as how to look out for these type of issues?
Yeah. Well, I think we have to bring the entire community or the congregation alongside of what we're doing. We have to, number one, talk about these things on a Sunday, and let the people, you know, create an expectation that, hey, there might be people coming in who are going to be either manifesting, or they're really struggling, or they're angry, because all of those things are rooted in sin, and we're here to fix sin. We're here to, Jesus died to deliver us from that. But I think we have to bring the entire congregation so that they're not just expecting to come and have a really good service and not be bothered, but we're here to help the broken.
Right.
And so if the community, the members of the church can be trained and taught, the atmospherics don't tense up and they don't freak out, and then everyone is checking and listening and praying and thinking, and I think we can cut off a lot of bigger issues through the community really not policing, but them managing and stewarding the call to reach out to the broken.
All right. And you,
We
Pastor
were on a
Sanders?
Zoom earlier today with the FBI.
Okay.
Even smaller churches need to bring in resources, need to be aware, need to be trained. Fight, flight, that whole syndrome. We have to be trained, and I agree. It starts with us as the leaders, but we have to create an atmosphere where they are trained. And not to be biased. We got to be careful that everybody's not sus.
Right.
We have to do it with a tender heart, but we have to be vigilant again, and that means that all of our deacons have to be trained. Our sound engineers who are when you come in the door, they have to be trained. They're watchful, although they're managing cameras and everything. They still have to be watchful. So preparation, training, and having this conversation.
Yes. What do you think?
For a small church, I think that one, I agree with both pastors and elders. You do have to train your congregation. As we normally tell all of our congregation, everybody who comes through that front door is not going to look like you. They're not going to dress like you. They're not going to smell like you. They're not going to think like you. And they're not going to talk like you. No matter how they come in, they all come into Christ. So we have to make sure that we don't have stereotypes, and we don't put nobody down, and we don't trigger what's going on in somebody's heart until they get to that altar. Once they get there, then now we can work with them. But once again, we have people stagnant throughout a small church.
And it's important. Do you think that, like, my granddaughter, she was telling me the other day that they were doing earthquake drills, so do you think that churches should hold drills,
Of course.
just, not on a Sunday morning service, but those that are willing to be participants, have them come out and you do mock scenarios. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think if you're going to do it, you have to do it on a Sunday morning. I mean, church isn't just a service, it's building life and training people to be mature people. Because if you don't do it on Sunday morning, it's not very realistic. But I think there's a way to do it to make it, I know it sounds a little bit, paradoxical, but make it fun. Make it like, hey, we're going to do this thing together. God's called us to have a church in the 21st century. Things are going crazy. God's shaking the nations of the earth, and all kinds of crises is happening, but we have to be ready. So here's what we're going to do if we need to do that, and make it be something that engages people, and that way it's in real time. So I would think that if you're going to do it, I don't think that's a bad idea to do. But Sunday's not just a service; it's our community gathering.
I understand. That's a really good point.
The Christian Post said there were 69 attacks on faith leaders from inside the church in the first 3 months of 2023.
That's something.
Yeah.
There were only 15 in 2019. So we see
It's trending up.
this trend of, like you were saying, angry, oppressed, and either mental issues. It almost sounded like the young lady at Bishop Jones' church was both. She was angry and had and appeared to have, some mental deficiencies. So yeah, we need both. Yeah.
Definitely.
I think we do need drills. Drills are important, at least on an annual basis. You want your people always prepared for no matter what's coming. I don't care if it's an earthquake. I don't care if it's a storm. I don't care if it's a fire. I don't care if it's, anything that comes into that church. Your members should be well aware of how to exit or how to stay in place. And so you have to have training for that. So it becomes automatic and not just, well, what do we do?
Right. Yeah, because generally people panic, in a situation like that. For instance, I was thinking back on that assault that happened with, I don't remember the young man's name, but he came into a Bible study and he sat during the Bible study.
South Carolina or somewhere.
Like he was, really into that, and then he, shot up many people in the church. And so right after that, churches became more alert. Right. But do you think that we still have that heightened alert, or we're sort of like more relaxed again?
Yeah, I think most people in any kind of a situation like that have the idea, well, it'll never happen here. And I'm sure that Bible study, they would have never even thought. And so we have to educate people to the possibilities because of the time that we live in. And I think there's a balance too of reaching out and caring for people coming in, but the balance is we got to also protect our babies and our kids and our families. And I can lay my life down for someone, but I can't lay other people's lives down for them. And we have to guard our families and our kids. So,
I agree. I mean, unfortunately, that is the 2023 church. It's a 2023 world and community. Yeah. And so it requires us. I'm with you. I mean, if somebody came in, I'm gonna be like David. I'm running towards them and praying all of our community gets a chance to we have to lay down our lives for our sheep. And so I'm not running. I'm running towards you. You know, if you come in our church, thank God we have people equipped and people that are positioned that probably won't have to.
Right.
But I agree, care for our sheep. We are the Davids of our churches. We cannot lose a sheep, you know, without going to look for them or making sure they're safe. So,
I don't think the alert level went down.
yeah.
I think the alert level went up
Okay.
since South Carolina. I think right now, most churches, at least the ones I know, are preparing for what may happen. So I think the alert level went up, and I think that now's the time to be better prepared than they were during that unfortunate incident.
Right.
But I don't see it going down. The elder said that times are getting crazy. Times are crazy. They're not getting it. We there.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Crazier.
Crazier.
Yeah.
They're not going to get better.
They're not. They get worse. The Bible
Because-
tells us they're gonna get worse and worse.
Yeah.
And so there's no. You can't let your guard down.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
one of the things that you all keep referencing Noel Jones, his wife, what we do is I keep my wife with me side by side. So she doesn't sit in the congregation. She sits with me up in the chancel area. That way nobody has access to her.
I mean, yeah, I thought that was sort of unusual.
Yeah.
Front seat.
But
you
that's
know.
I mean, that almost is kind of a pattern now because a lot of churches have gotten away from the, you know, sitting in a dais with pastor and wife because I think some churches it became viewed as idolization. The upper, you know,
Right.
and so you know, even at our church, yeah, my wife sits wherever she wants to sit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I get that. That's important. Now you're making me think. Okay, do I need to keep Kel close? You know.
Yeah.
Because the Bible tells us the two shall be one.
Yep.
So we
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And she's in ministry just like I'm in
Yeah.
ministry. So I'm called to care for God's people.
Yeah.
She's there to help me care for God's people. So it's not an elevation.
Yeah.
Now we in this together.
Right.
So what do you think as far as, I'm going to go back to the mental health issues here. What do you think that churches can do to help those that have mental health issues or
experiencing
battling
episodes.
episodes, manic episodes and things like that? What can we do?
Well, again, I mean, mental health issue is such a not complicated, but it's a tiered. There's so many levels of it, you know.
Spectrum.
I mean, yeah, it's a spectrum. I mean, it depends. I mean, if they're coming in and they're just, you know, having a schizophrenic episode, then you have to gently restrain them and call 911. If they come in, but they're just needing help, they've had trauma and undealt with and crisis, I think one of the main things we have to do is we have to create an atmosphere of peace and stillness and joy, because the joy of the Lord is our strength. And so we have to train our people that people are coming in out of horrific situations, and they need to come into a place where it's like the presence of the Lord and the presence of the Holy Spirit is so rich that they're like, wow, you know, what is this force that I'm feeling that's stealing me? And give them a chance to just be at rest, maybe for the first time in days. So it's a balance of call 911 and just be the presence of the Lord, and everything in between.
Do you think, well, as we are actually going to get ready to wrap up this segment, I do believe that we should have resources that we can refer people to.
Absolutely.
You know, that, okay, here's mental health crisis, hotline, you know, things like that. Even though we've done our part as a
Right.
church, we still need to refer, because we're supposed to take care of the whole man, right? So, and we're Tyrone. So we want to make sure that we're helping in all access. And so I really appreciate your perspectives on this and bringing insight. And so in closing, I just want to say thank you for joining us, and for our watching audience, we thank you for being with us today, and we hope to see you again on the pot.